Hello and welcome to this Reinteractive webinar. And I'm joined today by the COO of Reinteractive, Kane Hooper. Hello, Kane.
Hello, mate.
Hey. Feels like ages since we last spoke. Today in our webinar, of course, we are discussing how to vet a software development agency. How do you, as a person who needs software development done, how do you approach a web development company? What questions do you ask them? How do you decide if they're actually going to be good for the job or not? This is a difficult question, and it's one that has brought about literally from my years of experience. I've been in sales in one way or the other for decades. And it definitely is a problem. You have the salesperson on one side or your development agency on one side who knows a lot. They understand all the technical considerations. They understand the sales process. They understand the questions that should be asked. And you have the client or potential client on the other side who will know none of those things. And not because they are ignorant or, haven't had the opportunity to know. It's because they are not in the business of knowing. They might get a piece of software written once every 10 years, perhaps, or maybe it's once every 5 years, but that's still not all the time. I think before we start this, Kane, let's define what we mean by a web app or a web application or even software in general. Can you define that for us?
Yeah, when we generally talk about web apps, we're talking about not just a website, for example, like a marketing website or something that provides some basic content. We're talking about a web application. It performs some kind of major action. So, for example, you'd be talking about something like Xero if you're using accounting software, Facebook for social media. These are all platforms. They're effectively software that in days gone by you would have had to download and run on your system. Now more and more applications are moving into the internet, and more these applications are becoming what we call web applications. That's the key distinction between just a marketing site and something that performs very specific actions for users.
All right, so who's asking for web applications? What are the sorts of companies or what are the sorts of applications that people are asking for that might require this custom software development?
So you've got really two major areas, I reckon. So one major side is for internal uses. So when you're wanting to run certain processes and procedures, like you've got your HR management systems. So, tracking all of your employees, all of their training. So even like training software or learning management systems where your staff go online and they, do their training actions. And then you've got the customer facing applications. So if you're say you're in run a medical practice and you want to be able to run whole medical consultations via the internet, so the patient can log onto the system, the doctor can as well. And instead of having to come into the clinic, you're doing it via video call. Perhaps the whole script process can be run online so that once the doctor's finished, he types up the script and the patient can then just straight download it from the internet. So it's anything where there's sort of major actions. And in terms of what and who, if you've got a business and you've got either internal processes you want to automate or ways that you want to interact with your customers online, then that's where you'd be using web apps.
All right. And would this thing called AI features fit into that bucket?
Well, yes and no. So AI features has become a very big marketing buzzword. And we can do a whole discussion in regards to that. So there are places where being able to interact with AI is okay. Well, let's talk about a customer-facing site. So maybe an e-commerce would be a good example. So AI features that would be useful would be things like customer comes on and they know that, let's say it's selling dresses for females and they know what they want, but they don't know the exact brand or they don't know what exactly it's called. And so they can just communicate with the AI like they would be talking to a shop assistant going, it's for a formal, it's this sort of color, it's kind of this sort of fabric. And the AI can take that context and then use it through search to find the actual product rather than having the user having to very specifically search for that product. You can do the whole sales process through AI in that case. Sure. So yes, AI features, but I will say the AI has to deliver value and be of something. Like, you don't just put AI in for the sake of putting AI in. You put AI in because it provides additional value to the customer or the internal staff, if that's
Well,
what
you'll
you're
have
looking
to tell the rest of the internet that, Kane.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think every second day, I mean, the number of times I see a company go, "Oh, we're AI first," or we've got all these AI features, and
AI
you look at it and
powered.
go, "It's not. There's no AI. It's just like very good coding, very good logic." But all
All
right,
right.
anyhow, don't get me on my high horse on that.
Let's move on. The subject that we are discussing then today is how do we determine if our web development agency is any good? So let's say I am that person in the company whose responsibility is, let's say, product owner. That is the person that's responsible for the application. Maybe it's not yet built, or maybe it's been built and it needs to be maintained.
All right, we seem to have lost Errol there for a sec. So I'll start answering that question until he returns. I think when you're making decisions about building software, you have to do it from a very critical point of view. There's a huge number of software projects that fail, and there's a lot that don't fail, but they go well beyond their expected time and cost blowout, and these sorts of factors. And I think the first critical element is understanding what sort of company you want to do your project with. When we're talking in the realms of web development, so building websites, web applications, there's really sort of two major areas that one can come from, which is one is a company that's a marketing company. So you'll find many marketing companies who are excellent at SEO, getting products to market, getting people to the web application, and they provide web development services, but they're not. That's not their specialty. They're not software engineers.
Another question you might want to ask and have prepared in advance is what are the cost and budget considerations? So you will have a budget on your side, and you want to make sure that that budget is going to meet with the expectations. So is that budget real? Is it going to suit your developers, and so on? What is the approval process that's necessary? Internally, you'll have approvals. Maybe it has to go to a CFO or a founder. There'll be other people that need to approve what's being done. So what is your approval process? If you're not sure, that's a know that needs to be done. And what other considerations are there? Are there things broken about the application? Are there things that it's just not doing that it should? What sort of use is it getting? All of that sort of stuff. So these are things to have prepared in advance. Anything else that you would add to that list immediately, Kane?
Now, one or the either of us, his internet keeps cutting out, and I don't actually know whose it is. So,
I'll blame mine.
All right, fine, we'll blame yours. So, give me the question again, mate. Sorry, because I only got the
Sure, absolutely. So we've prepared a list of questions to ask in advance of meeting our development agency. Some of the things we've talked about is what are the timeframes, budget considerations, what's the approval process, and any known considerations. And of course, what do you want to get done? So anything that you would add to that list initially.
All right. So I really think there's two sort of sectors of development when it comes to the web. And I think it's really important that depending on what you're building, that you get the right agency for the right project. So, and I sort of break it down to you've got marketing companies that do web development, and then you've got software development firms, and they can be very different. Now, the marketing agencies are often great at doing your SEO, getting people to your site, and really good if you're building a basic marketing site or some very basic functionality. They'll often have some developers who are not too bad, who can do the basic things. Where I see a lot of issues occurring on that front is utilizing those marketing companies to build really complicated software applications or web applications. So again, if you're talking something like a human resources management system, or you're talking about a practice management system for the doctor, the marketing company is the wrong place to go because they're designed around the marketing of the site. Now, they could be good to do the marketing, but as you get more and more complex, you need to use specialized software development firms where they've got their whole development process lined up and worked out for the complicated, because software and custom software can get really complicated. The reason it get really complicated is that often you're building something that's never been built before. You're having to connect to and integrate with software that they haven't necessarily connected to before. It's not like building a house where the plumber, it's the same job from house to house. It's just finding where the pipes go, but it's relatively the same. When we're talking custom software, you're talking something brand new every time. There's always something new. And so you need software developers who are exceptionally good at adjusting and adapting to that unknown, who have experience in building the complicated. So the questions to be asking are, one, what type of firm are they? Are they a marketing firm or are they a dedicated software development firm? And get an idea of the sort of stuff they have actually built. If they're a marketing firm, they may have had their hand at some really complicated stuff, and 8 times out of 10, it'll be a bit of a disaster. And there's other questions you can ask to dig that up. If they're a dedicated software firm, they should have good examples of complex software that they can actually show you that they've built.
So understanding exactly what you're asking for is important in this case.
Yeah, so the second you get into building custom software, you kind of have to take the viewpoint that you yourself and your company has kind of become a software development firm or a software firm. And you have to start understanding what it takes to build software. I mean, you don't have to learn code, you don't have to understand all that, but you have to understand what the process is that it's involved. And the reason you have to understand that is if you don't, you can get hoodwinked by a firm that doesn't have the capabilities, doesn't have the expertise to do it, but is a very good sales pitch. And
Right.
this is where this sort of thing and understanding the right question to ask and getting in deep. But I think seeing the applications in, like, get them to show you the apps, get them to show you what they built and actually play with it rather than just talk about what they've done.
Which sort of brings us to this point on referrals. Now, referrals are good because, or case studies can be good, but they typically are only going to highlight those things that the agency know they've done exceptionally well. They've got a good relationship with that particular client, and they're the ones that they're going to showcase. What you want is to go, okay, give me some applications that you've built. Let's have a look at those. Let's see how they worked. And then you can even go off and separately verify those with the owner yourself. So that would be one way of handling that. I do find, Kane, sometimes that in speaking to a potential client, they will ask a question like, have you built anything in the finance sector? Have you built anything in the not-for-profit sector? And they want to understand a vertical. And have you built anything in that vertical? And I find that whilst I'll answer that question, of course, it's less of a relevant question because it probably doesn't matter a lot. If you're talking to a professional developer and they're very good at what they do and they're good at doing the integrations or whatever part of that feature is that you need, the vertical is probably less important than show me a similar feature that you've built. Show me something along those lines that would demonstrate that you have the capability to build this thing.
I think the only time vertical really becomes a point is in very, very specialized fields. So if you were building something very specific in the medical space, such as, the radiography space and those sorts of things, yes, you need some expertise around that. But when we're talking about the standard web application, you're right. The vertical is not that important because as the product owner, if you're in your company, you have the expertise and should have within your organization around what you want the software to do. What you need to verify is, yes, have they built similar features? Have they integrated? Have they been able to integrate with similarly complicated platforms? Because there's some very, very good software development firms that may not have worked in your vertical, and you may not even find people in your vertical necessarily. And frankly, verticals in software development is not the issue.
A lot less relevant. There might be some reason you might want to go with a company that you know is the expert in Australia on finance tech, in fintechs, maybe. But then on the other hand, maybe not, Okay, all right. Well, so that's fair then. And then when we're looking at references and we're looking at case studies, we're looking for the things that have a point of comparison with what we're asking for, but aren't necessarily the same. And probably another point in custom software development is it is custom. So if you're looking for, have you built this exact feature before? The answer should definitely be no, because unless it's something like a login page or something generic like that, you want your site to be unique. You want your application to be unique. So you're not going to be looking for, have you built this exact thing before, but something similar or something along the same lines.
Yeah, good software firms have built, they should have built hundreds of web applications, and often will have a wide range of different applications that they've built. And what it ultimately comes down to is the technical skill of the developers and the project management skill of whoever's going to be managing and running the project. Actually, those two are by far the most important factors in the success of software. Whether you build, I mean, I'm I'm building an application, just something I'm working on the weekends for not-for-profit stuff I've never seen before, but because I've got 10 years of experience at Reinteractive, managed 150 projects and seen basically everything that can happen. I was able to build this feature for them that this other dev had been taking weeks and couldn't handle it. I got it done in a weekend. Because of both my project management and tech skill, and those are the things you should
and problem solving skills, I imagine.
Yeah, and that kind of goes hand in hand with, I guess, both the project management side, because a good project manager, most of what they're doing is the problem solving. Because every software project's going to have issues, and again, you're talking about custom software, something, or at least some features that have never been built before, certainly not combined in the way that they are, and everything about it is problem solving. So it's the technical problem solving. A good dev can handle that. And then with AI, that should speed up that problem solving process, because things that took ages to find answers to, you can get the answers now. But the project manager in particular is where you're going to make or break. So you can have medium level developers and an awesome project manager and succeed. If you have medium developers and a very poor project manager, you're in trouble.
Set up for failure.
Yeah.
So if I was a potential client, some of the things I might want to ask, I'm talking to a salesperson. The salesperson is not a technical person, or at least not a thoroughly technical person. They might understand some things and enough to answer some questions. But a good salesperson would definitely say, that's the limit of my knowledge on this. Let's bring in the solution engineer or the technical expert or whoever that person is in that organization that can answer the more technical questions. If I was a client, I would want to speak to that sort of person and throw them some questions. Now, you might not know the exact questions to ask, but you can, by talking to them, understand what is the depth of their knowledge. Do they understand what to look for in this particular application? They might express, here's how I might go about solving that problem. I don't know how to do this yet, but here are some of the tools I might use, or here are some of and you would understand through their hesitation or lack of it, does this person actually know what they're talking about? So these are some things to look for.
Yeah, tech guys tend to be pretty blunt with their viewpoint.
Yes.
Whereas salespeople can be overly optimistic. So you can generally get a straight answer from technical guys if you just ask them directly. But you also, if I was going to hire a software firm, I would actually ask to speak to the project manager, and I'd want to understand how do they run the project, because there's a number of things that are very, very successful in running a project that you need to keep an eye out for. Like, for example, is this company going to go off and build the software and then come back to you 3 months later and then get you to test the whole thing there? I'll tell you right now, that's a recipe for disaster. Or are you a teammate throughout the entire development process? You expected at daily project meetings, is the team asking you questions to clarify, how do you want this? Oh, by the way, this feature is getting really complicated. We could probably get you 80% of what you want for like 30% of the effort and cost, and the ability to adjust and change as the complexity of the project is unraveled. These are the sorts of questions you want to be asking of the project team. How do you manage communications? How often are you going to talk to me? How often am I going to test the development. Because if you're testing the development every day as new parts of the application are built, very quickly, if there's an issue, it'll be uncovered and you have time to resolve it, rather than 3 months later when you're trying to test the whole thing and finding half of it is not what you wanted.
In that initial sales process, one of the things you could be looking for, you're talking to the salesperson, let's say you've got the project manager on the line and you're able to speak to them as well. And this might not all occur in a single meeting, but over a series of meetings. You got to look for inconsistencies. So it could be inconsistencies between what the salesperson says and what the technical person says. The sales guy says, oh, yes, of course, we can do that. No problem at all. That'll be easy. And the technical person says, I don't know how I would go about doing that. Okay, so you have an inconsistency there. And maybe it can't be done, or maybe it's going to be very difficult and expensive to do. And the salesperson's going, no, don't worry about it, just sign up. So have a think about that. There could be some other inconsistencies as well of time and so on that you want to look for, but also look for when somebody says something can be done and the published documentation says something else. What's published documentation? Could be a website, could be a capability statement, could be a pamphlet that explains the services of the business. If they say they can do something, but you don't see it in writing, that could be a red flag. Now, maybe it's not. Maybe the published documentation just didn't say it, and maybe it is a new feature or it is a new service or it's something like that. And that's okay, but make sure then if that inconsistency exists, and it doesn't matter what it is, that you demand that point is put in writing. So before you go ahead and do anything, you'll have a contract or a statement of work or a master services agreement or some document like that everybody's going to sign off on. And it should state very exactly what the correct answer is to any of those inconsistent points so that you can hold your development agency to it. And hopefully what they've said is absolutely accurate and correct. Anything you would add to that particular point?
I think that you've always got the push and pull between sales and the guys that deliver. Salespeople are always going to be optimistic. The technical guys are always going to be a bit more pessimistic. But when you're talking about software and complicated things such as this, I would have a tendency to listen more to the technical guys. If you've got a good software development firm, and you come to them with a project and say, hey, can you do this? A bad development firm will just say, yeah, sure, we can do it, no worries. A really good software firm, as needed, will push back on you and will say, right, this feature here, we've built that sort of thing before, and I'll tell you, not many people use it, and it's going to cost you, this amount of money. How valuable is it actually? And you'll get that tug of war going on between the ideal vision for the software and then what's technically feasible, but also, what's feasible from a cost perspective. Now, that's generally a good firm to listen to because they're actually putting the final result of your web application first and foremost, beyond just getting you to sign up and spend lots of money and potentially waste money on unnecessary features.
Yeah. And you should end up with an exact bill of goods as well. So there should be an exact statement of here's the scope that we're going to be building. This is what we can do. That should be very detailed as well. So it should be line items of we're going to build this, we're going to build this. Here's how long we expect each of these to take. So when you sign up for it, you pay for it, basically what you're getting. You can always add to that or you can remove things from it later, but at least it's a known and agreed upon thing in advance.
Yeah.
Couple more points because I don't want to belabor this whole area. I think one of the important things, and you've already brought this up, Kane, is getting questions asked from your development agency to the client instead of just the other way around. Clarifications, understanding, is this something you actually need? Questions about approvals process, testing processes, things like that, because these things are going to make a big difference later on. So understanding them up front before anything is signed off on to make sure it's a good fit, client to developer and so on, and is something that the developer knows they can build. So they should be asking their own questions quite liberally.
Yeah, I've noticed a pattern of particular cultures. So I'm talking about developers. A lot of developers work overseas, which is fine. Some very, very good developers overseas. But there are particular cultures that will not push back and will basically do whatever you tell them. So it'd be a little bit like if you were going to build a house and you had a budget of, say, $500,000 to build the home. And you came in and you said, all right, great. I want chrome plated everything. I want, the fanciest kitchen. I want, all these things. Can you do it? Oh, yeah, no problems. No worries. We can definitely do that. 5-star service. We're the best. And then, of course, what happens in that scenario is you get overruns and variation costs and so on and so on. And so when you're dealing with a team that's overseas, if there's just a lot of nodding and yeses and so on, you're going to run into that problem where if you don't know software development, you don't know what things are going to cost and how complex some things may or may not be. And if you don't have that pushback, I've seen this pretty regularly where the final product is nowhere near what you wanted, or you start getting variation costs. The quality has to be reduced in order to deliver the features, so they don't quite work properly, or they're hard to maintain later down the track. So be mindful of who you're dealing with. And if you get people who do talk back at you, meaning they ask questions, they clarify, they push back, they make other recommendations, that's maybe not important. What's really important, that is in and of itself will be a gauge of a company that will work a lot better with you. And I would suggest have a much higher chance of success overall.
Yeah, absolutely. The final point that I'm going to bring up is when you're looking for a development agency to work with, is look for one that's willing to work with you, especially in those initial steps and those initial, discussions before anything's signed off. A good agency will push back on you. A good agency will ask their own questions, but they'll also answer things honestly. They won't hesitate, or if they don't know, they'll get the correct answer from the correct person. They won't push you into signing on the dotted line, but will work with you to understand what is your internal processes. How do you get this thing signed off, and understand the long-term approach to the project as well? Because a development process is never just one and done. It's an ongoing thing. So you want someone that you can have a relationship over the longer term, not just for the length of time that it takes to build that feature or that application. Those would be my final points. Anything else, Kane, that you would bring up?
I think the key outside is we've discussed, but is seeing. Don't listen, I guess, is a very good maxim when it comes to software development. See what they've done, look at what they've done. Don't just listen to the brags. The brags may be legit, but they also may not be, particularly if they're a very slick sales operation. They could be a slick sales operation and also be an excellent delivery team. So look, don't listen is key in choosing who you go with.
Great. All right, good. Thank you for that, Kane. From our listeners, are there any additional questions? You can probably put them into the chat or whatever platform you're listening on, and they'll get relayed to me. Any other questions? Anything we need to cover? No. Okay, great. Well, look, I appreciate everyone coming on today. If you're listening to this as a recording, or you think of some questions later on that you forgot to ask or whatever, then maybe just, reach out to me. That's absolutely fine. I do actually have one question. Excuse me, Kane, before I finish. The question is this: if the tech firm is pushing back and is genuine as to why, then how do both company and client align their goals so that there is harmony and the client doesn't interpret that as the tech firm being difficult? Oh yeah, sometimes the developer will push back. They'll push back because they don't think the timelines are realistic or the budget is realistic that's been requested, or technically something is even feasible, like it can't be done. Sometimes a client will go, well, I saw this feature on the Uber website and I want you to build that for me. And sometimes you have to understand that's years and millions of dollars of R&D. And if you can't, if you're not able to do that, then you wouldn't be able to have that feature just because Uber has it. So it could be that sort of thing, or it could be that your developer does not have the capability or the capacity to deliver to you as well, in which case they should probably just be honest and upfront about that. Hey, I don't have a developer that's able to start on this for 3 months or 6 months. or I don't have the skill set internally to be able to deliver this, but here's the name of a development firm that I think might be able to help you out. Or do you want to wait for 6 months while I skill up on that particular thing, or 3 months for us to skill up on that particular thing? I think that would be the answer to that question. If a tech firm is pushing back on you, though, you need to get them to be honest about why that is, and then either deal with that or move on to another developer as well, of course.
Yeah, there's a big difference between pushback being just someone being difficult and pushback being just a realistic view of what's capable. It'd be like if you're talking to your doctor and you said, you need your appendix out. And the doctor said, okay, well, you're going to have to stay in the hospital for 3 days. And you said, well, I only want to be there for a day. Right. You probably should listen to your doctor.
There could be some pushback there. Yeah, it's appropriate.
I mean, I'm sure there are difficult people, but of course, but it's the same thing. So if you go, well, I've got a deadline, it has to be done by the end of February, and the software firm's just like, that's just unrealistic. You should listen, because if you push and try and get the software done, what you will likely end up with is incomplete, broken features, code that's been rushed, which you don't see, but you find out a year later when you're trying to maintain and extend your website, and everything costs 3 times more because of how difficult it is. Particularly push back on timelines. Listen to your developers. They've been there. They know what they're talking about. Rush timelines on software is a recipe for absolute disaster. That's my final point.
So some pushback is absolutely appropriate.
Yes.
All right, good. Well, thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate you attending the webinar with us today. If you want a good, smooth sales process, you know who to call. I've got my hand up. You can give me a call. You can contact me through social media. I'm happy to help you and step you through the process, and of course, help you to get your web application built. So give me a call. Thanks, everyone. Bye.